5 takeaways from Trump's State of Union address, written by Garrett Downs, published by CNBC. President Donald Trump delivered a nearly 2-hour State of the Union address on Tuesday, focusing largely on the economy that he declared was set to boom. The president delivered the signature annual address as he sees his poll numbers on the economy plummet ahead of the 2026 midterms, which loom less than 9 months away. Those elections threaten to shift control of Congress from Republicans and Trump's control of Washington along with it. Here are 5 takeaways from Trump's State of the Union. Number 1. 401ks for everybody. Trump called for the creation of a government-backed 401k-like plan for U.S. workers who don't receive a retirement match from their employer. Quote, "My administration will give these oft-forgotten American workers, great people, the people that built our country, access to the same type of retirement plan offered to every federal worker. We will match your contribution with up to $1,000 each year," Trump said. Trump said the plan would ensure that all Americans can profit from a rising stock market. Trump and his administration have often caught flack for touting stock market gains as evidence of a booming economy, while millions of Americans are not invested in the market. A White House official granted anonymity to discuss the plan said it would grant eligible workers access to savings vehicles similar to the thrift savings plan available to federal workers, which they said provides for an efficient savings program that includes a government match and offers diversified, index-based investment options and portfolio choices. The plan would tap an existing program known as the Savers Match Tax Credit that was enacted under the 2022 Secure 2.0 law to provide an annual match of up to $1,000 to low-income workers beginning in 2027. Number 2. Trump reiterates his call to bar private equity from gobbling up homes. The president reiterated his call on Congress to pass legislation barring large institutional investors from buying up single-family homes, asking Congress to codify an executive order he signed to do so. Quote, "I'm asking Congress to make that ban permanent because homes for people, really that's what we want. We want homes for people, not corporations. Corporations are doing just fine," end quote. Trump's call to bar institutional investors from gobbling up homes echoes populist proposals from the progressive left, who are hammering the president on affordability. Democrats released another plan earlier Tuesday to limit the ability of larger investors to buy up homes, just before the State of the Union. 3. The economy is doing great, Trump says. Trump said the economy is roaring like never before as polls continue to show voters are soaring on his performance on the economy and as Democrats hammer him and Republicans on affordability. The president also took credit for what he said was the defeat of inflation, the bane of his predecessor and political nemesis, former President Joe Biden. "Inflation is plummeting," Trump said. "In 12 months, my administration has driven core inflation to the lowest level in more than 5 years. The Consumer Price Index, a key measure of inflation, rose 2.4% in January from a year earlier, according to the latest numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That was down from 2.7% in December and lower than expected. Excluding food and energy, which are volatile, the core CPI was up 2.5%, the lowest level since April 2021. 4. Democrats offer some, but not explosive, resistance in the chamber. Democrats aired their frustrations with the president at certain points in the speech, but largely avoided outright interference with the president's remarks. Trump goaded Democrats for not standing after he asked lawmakers to stand up and show your support if they agreed that the first duty of the U.S. government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. That prompted a brief back and forth between Trump and Representatives Ilhan Omar, Democrat from Minnesota, and Rashida Tlaib, Democrat from Michigan. Omar is from Minnesota, where 2 U.S. citizens were shot dead by federal immigration officers this year while carrying out the president's deportation agenda. Representative Al Green, a Democrat from Texas, was ejected from the chamber for a second year in a row during a speech by Trump after he held a sign that read, "Black people aren't apes." Trump's personal social media account recently shared a blatantly racist video that had depicted the Obamas as apes. 5. Trump mostly keeps the speech domestic. Trump mostly focused his speech on domestic policy and political issues and avoided getting bogged down in his efforts abroad. The president did, however, speak briefly about Iran, which he has directed a massive military buildup and where he's been hinting they might want to strike. We are in negotiations with them. They want to make a deal, but we haven't heard those secret words. We will never have a secret weapon. Trump said of Iran, "My preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy. But one thing is certain, I will never allow the world's #1 sponsor of terror, which they are by far, to have a nuclear weapon." Trump's focus on domestic issues is likely a reflection of the political reality. Democrats have taken an early lead in pulling ahead of the midterms and largely set up 2025 off-year elections by focusing on affordability and kitchen table issues. Republicans seem to appreciate the life raft. Quote, "What I was hoping he'd do would be to talk about the things moms and dads worry about when they lie down at night to sleep and can't. And he did," end quote, said Senator John Kennedy, Republican of Louisiana, after the speech. What Trump avoided in this State of the Union could haunt him in November, written by Eli Stokols, published by Politico. President Donald Trump's State of the Union address was defined in many respects not by what he said, but by what he avoided saying. There were the mistakes he avoided making. Trump did not attack the Supreme Court. He did not blitz members of his own party who have criticized him. He avoided rambling, angry digressions from the script. Then there were the issues he avoided addressing. Trump offered no new ideas on housing or healthcare, two defining issues of the midterm campaign. He made no mention of the Jeffrey Epstein scandals consuming politics in Washington and far beyond. He did not clarify his policy toward Iran, even as he masses air and naval forces in the region. It was, for better or worse, a speech not likely to change the political trajectory of Trump's second term. The historically long address was, in some ways, nearly indistinguishable from Trump's daily patter in the Oval Office, on Air Force One, or in the White House driveway. For some leaders in the president's party, mindful of his capacity for political self-harm, that might be a cause for relief. Republicans wake up on Wednesday morning with no political problems they did not have the day before. Yet, the status quo of the midterm campaign does not favor the GOP. Trump is on the defensive on many of the issues driving the election cycle so far. That, too, did not change. Quote, "In some ways, this was Trump's finest. It was his full patriotic projection. It was aspirational, emotive, yet in terms of a political speech, there was no policy prescription that will guide Republicans towards safer ground in the midterms," said GOP strategist Matthew Bartlett, who served in Trump's first administration. Another Republican operative, granted anonymity to discuss the president's performance, expressed concern that the speech didn't do enough to look forward. "It's all look behind, as great as it all is," the operative said. "I wish we had more detailed steps to take, directing Congress to do more for people who are hurting." For some, Trump did exactly what he needed to do, offering plenty of red meat to a base hungry for the president to call out Democrats for their hypocrisy about inflation, blame former President Joe Biden, and talk tough on illegal immigration. Steve Bannon, Trump's former chief strategist, said talking to so-called persuadable voters is a losing strategy that failed in 2018. "Tonight changes that," he said. "The president is not reaching out, he's leaning forward. Game on now." The speech was replete with Trump's usual flourishes, braggadocio, hyperbole, unscripted asides, and anecdotes. He talked about the wars he stopped, the prices he has helped bring down, and the hundreds of billions of dollars he's brought in from foreign investments through tariffs and negotiations. Quote, "We're winning so much that we really don't know what to do about it. People are asking me, please, 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 Mr. President, we're winning too much. We can't take it anymore. We're not used to winning in our country until you came along. We were just always losing," end quote, Trump said. Still, 13 months into his second term, defined largely by the president's outsized ambition and focus on personal prerogatives, be it his quest for a Nobel Peace Prize or determination to remodel and redecorate the White House complex, the remarks were also notable for their uncharacteristic restraint. The president remained disciplined even as he broke his own record for the longest State of the Union ever. There was no mention of owning or annexing Greenland, which caused international chaos and strained the transatlantic alliance just last month. In fact, foreign policy made up a relatively small part of his remarks, given what a huge part of his agenda it has been. With his approval rating stuck around 40% and Republicans increasingly nervous about the possibility of a midterm tsunami, Trump stuck to politically safer ground. He interspersed his remarks with several feel-good set pieces, diverting the audience's attention to the House balcony in an effort to rise above partisan politics. He cheered the gold medal Olympic hockey team, praised the Coast Guard rescue swimmer who saved an 11-year-old from the Central Texas flooding, pinned medals and ribbons on war heroes and servicemen, and prayed for a woman trying to conceive through IVF whose drugs were cheaper because of Trump RX. That last point, a focus on economic issues and affordability, was an effort to shore up a growing liability. Trump outlined the tax cuts enacted by Republicans last year and outlined additional proposals for Congress, urging lawmakers to avoid prospective homeowners by preventing private equity firms from buying up single-family homes and to lower prescription drug costs for seniors. But with the GOP holding such slim legislative majorities and the focus quickly turning to the campaign trail, the prospects for major legislative action this year are slim. Asserting that consumer prices are coming down, Trump continued to attack Democrats as hypocrites for suddenly emphasizing affordability issues. "You caused that problem," Trump said to the Democratic side of the aisle. "Their policies created the high prices. Our policies are rapidly ending them." His hectoring, especially when he turned to immigration issues, provoked a stronger reaction from a few Democratic lawmakers who weren't able to stay quiet. "You should be ashamed of yourselves," Trump said to Democrats, over their refusal to fund the Department of Homeland Security. Democrats are demanding changes to how federal agents operate in the wake of the deadly shootings of protesters by immigration and custom enforcement agencies, carrying out raids in Minneapolis and several other cities. Representatives Rashida Tlaib, a Democrat from Michigan, and Ilhan Omar, Democrat from Minnesota, both frequent targets of the president's attacks, shouted back. "You have killed Americans," Omar shouted, referencing Alex Preddy, the nurse who was killed by federal agents in Minneapolis last month. "Alex wasn't a criminal," she said. When some Democrats didn't heed Trump's call for lawmakers to stand at various points to show support for crime victims attacked by undocumented immigrants or parents seeking to prevent their children's gender transition, the president dismissed the entire party. "These people are crazy," he said. "They're crazy." Trump looked to frame his dizzying return to the Oval Office, the upheaval caused by his predatory foreign policy, his punishing, unpredictable tariff regime, and even the violence sparked by his immigration enforcement efforts as a modern corollary to America's original revolution, filling his speech with references to 1776 and the milestone 250th anniversary the country will mark in July. "The first 250 years were just the beginning," Trump said as he wrapped his speech. "The golden age of America is upon us. The revolution that began in 1776 has not ended, and it still continues because the flame of liberty and independence still burns in the heart of every American patriot. And our future will be bigger, better, brighter, bolder, and more glorious than ever before." Trump shames Democrats in viral State of the Union challenge on migrant crime, First Duty, written by Peter Pinedo, published by Fox News. Immigration enforcement and border security were front and center in President Donald Trump's State of the Union address Tuesday night, with the commander-in-chief touting zero illegal border crossings over the past 9 months. Of the words Trump mentioned most, border was tied with tax for first at 16 mentions. One of the most impactful moments of the night came when Trump challenged every lawmaker in the chamber to stand if they believed their first duty is to protect American citizens rather than illegal immigrants. "One of the great things about the State of the Union is how it gives Americans the chance to see clearly what their representatives really believe," Trump said. "So tonight, I'm inviting every legislator to join with my administration in reaffirming a fundamental principle. If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens," he said. As Trump said this, the Republican side of the chamber stood, while Democrats remained seated, prompting condemnation from the president. "Isn't that a shame? You should be ashamed of yourself for not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself," Trump repeated. He then called on Democrats to end sanctuary policies across the country, saying That is why I'm also asking you to end deadly sanctuary cities that protect the criminals and enact serious penalties for public officials who block the removal of criminal aliens, in many cases, drug lords, murderers, all over our country, he said. They're blocking the removal of these people from our country, and you should be ashamed of yourselves, he said. He also slammed Democrats for having closed the agency responsible for protecting Americans from terrorists and murderers, referring to the Department of Homeland Security. He said, "Tonight, I'm demanding the full and immediate restoration of all funding for border security and homeland security of the United States." Trump knocked former President Joe Biden, saying, "After 4 years in which millions and millions of illegal aliens poured across our borders, totally unfettered and unchecked, we now have the strongest and most secure border in American history by far." In the past 9 months, 0 illegal aliens have been admitted to the United States, he added. The flow of deadly fentanyl across our border is down by a record 56% in 1 year, according to Trump. Despite these successes, Trump acknowledged the impact crimes committed by illegal immigrants have had on American citizens. He honored several angel families in the gallery whose children or loved ones were killed by illegal immigrants. These are the angel moms and families that for decades our government betrayed and our media totally ignored, he said. He paid tribute to Jacqueline Medina, whose daughter, Lisbeth Medina, was murdered by an illegal immigrant in Texas. Quote, "In 2023, a 16-year-old high school cheerleader named Lisbeth Medina was supposed to perform in her town's Christmas parade, but she never arrived. Her mother, Jacqueline, went home to look for her, and she found her lying dead in a bathtub, bleeding profusely after being stabbed 25 times. Her heartbroken mother is in the gallery to remind everyone in this chamber exactly why we are deporting illegal alien criminals from our country at record numbers, and we're getting them the hell out of here fast. We don't want them." End quote, all from Trump. He also honored Delilah Coleman, a child in the gallery who, at age 5, was paralyzed in an auto pileup in California caused by an illegal immigrant. Quote, "The driver was an illegal alien let in by Joe Biden and given a commercial driver's license by open borders politicians in California. Most illegal aliens do not speak English and cannot read even the most basic road signs as to direction, speed, danger, or location. That's why tonight I'm calling on Congress to pass what we will call the Delilah Law, barring any state from granting commercial driver's licenses to illegal aliens," he said. Trump also blamed unrestricted immigration and open borders for the massive fraud schemes uncovered late last year in Minnesota, which he said were tantamount to plundering by members of the state's Somali community. When it comes to the corruption that is plundering it, really, it's plundering America. There's been no more stunning example than Minnesota, where members of the Somali community have pillaged an estimated $19 billion from the American taxpayer, he said. This is the kind of corruption that shreds the fabric of a nation. Though he said the administration has already been working on it like you wouldn't believe, he announced he is appointing Vice President J.D. Vance to lead the war on fraud. So tonight, although it started 4 months ago, I am officially announcing the war on fraud to be led by our great Vice President J.D. Vance. He'll get it done. And if we're able to find enough of that fraud, we will actually have a balanced budget overnight. It'll go very quickly. That's the kind of money you're talking about. We'll balance our budget, he said. The Somali pirates who ransacked Minnesota remind us that there are large parts of the world where bribery, corruption, and lawlessness are the norm, not the exception, he concluded. Importing these cultures through unrestricted immigration and open borders brings those problems right here to the U.S., and it is the American people who pay the price in higher medical bills, car insurance rates, rent, taxes, and, perhaps most importantly, crime. We will take care of this problem, he vowed, adding, "We are not playing games." Trump says he prefers diplomacy but lays the case for war with Iran, written by Barack Ravid, published by Axios. President Trump said in his State of the Union speech on Tuesday that he prefers a diplomatic solution to the crisis with Iran, but at the same time laid out a case for a potential war against the Islamic Republic. Why does this matter? Well, Trump's remarks about Iran were relatively short and were not the center part of his speech. But it was the first time he detailed the reasons that led him to consider launching a military campaign. Trump's speech may mark the launch of an effort to prepare U.S. public opinion for going to war against Iran and to justify such a move if he concludes that the negotiations with Iran have reached a dead end. At Trump's orders, the American military has assembled over the past several weeks the biggest military buildup in the Middle East since the U.S. invaded Iraq. His speech increased the likelihood that the meeting between his envoys Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, planned to take place in Geneva on Thursday, could be the last chance to reach a diplomatic breakthrough and prevent war. Trump outlined in his speech a list of reasons for the current crisis with Iran. He said that for 47 years, the Iranian regime and its proxies have spread terrorism and hate, killing thousands of people in the region, including American soldiers and at least 32,000 civilians during protests that erupted last December. Trump said the Iranian regime has developed ballistic missiles that threaten Europe and the U.S., bases in the region, and claimed the Iranians are developing intercontinental ballistic missiles that will soon reach the U.S. U.S. intelligence assesses Iran is developing such missiles, but will need at least another decade to do it. Of note, Trump's most serious claim was that Iran is trying to rebuild its nuclear weapons program that he said was obliterated during the Israeli-led 12-day war last June. He said Iran was warned after that war not to try and rebuild its nuclear weapons program. What he's saying: we are in negotiations with them and they want to make a deal, but we haven't heard those secret words. We will never have a nuclear weapon, Trump said. He continued with, my preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy, but one thing is certain. I will never allow the number one state sponsor of terrorism to have a nuclear weapon, and no nation should ever doubt America's resolve. The other side: several hours before Trump's speech, Iran's foreign minister wrote on X that Iran will resume talks with the U.S. in Geneva on Thursday in order to reach a fair and equitable deal as soon as possible. A deal is within reach, but only if diplomacy is given priority, Araghchi wrote. Araghchi stressed that Iran's position is that it will never develop a nuclear weapon under no circumstances. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and CIA Director John Ratcliffe gave a classified briefing on Tuesday to the Gang of Eight about the crisis with Iran. Representative Jim Himes, a Democrat from Connecticut, ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee, said after the briefing he was very concerned that Trump might be about to go to war with Iran. We have not heard articulated a single good reason for why now is the moment to launch yet another war in the Middle East, he said. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, said after the briefing that he still had a lot of questions that need to be answered about the military buildup in the region. Trump promised to replace taxes with tariffs. Here's what it would cost. Written by Courtney Brown, published by Axiom. President Trump said on Tuesday he believes tariff revenues could one day replace U.S. income tax, the government's primary revenue source. Why it matters: customs duties fall well short of the trillions of dollars that Americans pay in taxes each year. Income taxes generated roughly 13 times more revenue than tariffs did in the latest fiscal year. But Trump's claim is the latest confirmation of plans to keep import taxes at the center of his economic agenda, despite new curbs on his power to unilaterally impose tariffs. What they're saying: as time goes by, I believe the tariffs paid for by foreign countries will substantially replace the modern-day system of income tax, taking a great financial burden off the people that I love, Trump said during his State of the Union speech. By the numbers, income taxes alone brought in roughly $2.6 trillion in the most recent fiscal year, according to the Treasury Department. Custom duties were only about $195 billion in the same period. That was a record haul, but still far below what's necessary to replace income tax. Between the lines, raising tariff rates substantially would not close the gap either. Higher tariff rates do not translate into proportionally higher revenues because, as the tax rises, consumers buy fewer imports, businesses shift to higher-cost domestic alternatives, and reduce production. Economists at the Cato Institute wrote last week. This dynamic response limits how much revenue tariffs can realistically generate. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said last week that fresh tariffs would bring in the same revenues as the levies previously imposed by the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Those IEEPA tariffs were overturned by the Supreme Court last week, delivering a stunning blow to Trump's economic agenda. Trump said he would reinstate a 15% global tariff under a separate trade authority, though Customs and Border Protection sent a memo to importers on Tuesday saying that rate was 10%. Even top Trump economic officials described tariff revenue as a melting ice cube. If the administration's economic vision is realized and manufacturers build more facilities in the U.S., tariff revenue should shrink further over time as companies substitute foreign goods for domestic-made products. The bottom line is, Trump's sticking to his lofty goals for tariff revenue, even with last week's resounding defeat at the Supreme Court.